Hey everybody, it's Seth.
Hi, it's Becky.
And we are taking some time off to retool the podcast.
It's going to be new, improved, fresh, with lots of great new elements, and we're going to relaunch in January.
Yes, so until then, because you're a loyal listener, we want to go back into the archives and bring back some of these episodes that we think you might like.
We've had some great interviews over the last couple of years, and we want you to hear them.
Here's one right here.
Enjoy.
Check, 1, 2, 3.
The
Brief.
This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
Arts and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
And I'm Becky Scarcello.
And I love biking.
Me too.
I'm going to tell you, don't think that means that I'm any good at it. I'm not. But I
Well,
like
you're not
doing
bad.
It. Yeah, and I get antsy, especially this time of year, because I'm
Let's
ready
get
to
outside.
start. You know, we're recording this, and it is sunny outside, and we're like, why are we inside?
I know.
So look, we had to bring the king of biking in to talk about it, because the season is, about to kick off. We have here with us today, we have Jason Hall, who is the founder of RiDetroit, which is one of the bike groups that goes around town, gives tours, shows off the city, engages people in conversation. Jason, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
So tell us about the venture. Tell us about RiDetroit.
RiDetroit is a bicycle group that is focused on smaller groups that really encourage the conversations that need to happen. The conversations about Detroit, what's happening in Detroit, what should happen in Detroit, or just hang out and have a good time.
How do you think cycling lends itself to those conversations?
Wow, come on.
Yeah.
There's no better way to see anything than on a bike. And I'm not just saying that because I'm hardcore and I love my bicycle. I mean, I started to think that way through my love for bicycling because I started to see the city more through it. So, when you're walking, everybody, it's cool. You get to see everything. Yeah. But what's cool about a bike is less effort is put in to go further, and you can actually see more cool stuff. So that's why I really believe that the bike is the best, because when you're in a car, which we call the glass bubble, you don't really have to deal with the environment, or you don't have to deal with any of the reality that's going on outside that bus or car. But when you're on a bike, you get the wheels, you get the ability to go, and you get the ability to be a part of what's happening around you.
So I like biking. I actually started biking because I was one of those guys that had a hard time finding exercise. Like, I don't like going to the gym.
Same.
And I'm from California. I would bike a lot out there. And then when I came here, would start going biking. But I'd never seen a bike culture quite like there is in the city of Detroit, where you just have these huge groups that go out, and they don't go fast, and they're just social. And the other thing that I got to ask you about is the sort of bling on the bikes, because that was the other thing. Yeah. I'd never seen anything like that.
That's a Detroit thing. That's really, other cities do it now, and I'm not saying we're the originators of it, but I will tell you this. Anywhere that I go, whenever I get to that place, the first thing they say is, what's up with those bikes? And just like Detroit with anything else, we are culture leaders. So people look at Detroit like when we went to Chicago, I'll say, they get it from us, and so that's one of the things I'm definitely proud of, is the evolution of sort of how Detroit has put its own spin on what bicycling and bicycling culture is,
When you say that, they get it from us. Before this, you were doing slow roll. Was that something that was there from the beginning, or was that something that came over time? Or
no, it was definitely there, but not on the level that it is now. I think as Detroit's another, to give us even more props. We're one of those cities that sees opportunity, and when we saw the opportunity to engineer something that might have been a hobby and make money off of it, and there was a way to showcase that, which Slow Roll really was. You could really go on a Monday and almost look at, there were different guys who would set up in a section, and it would be like 10 of their custom bikes, and they would invite clients out to Slow Roll to look at their bikes. So when you can create that kind of thing, that's a Detroit, that's what we do. And so we had it on a level where even when I grew up, we had reflectors, horns, all that, but never a a barbecue grill.
Where do you
anything
go
like
for
that.
that? Because I've sort of exhausted what you can get off of Amazon, and I'm still completely outdone by everybody on these bike rides. Like, where do you go for custom bike work like that?
You build it.
Yeah,
you
as
really
DIY.
Do. You build
Really?
it. You really do. Even now, I work in a bike shop, and guys come in all the time, and they're really trying to customize their bikes. And what we tell them is there's only so far you can go with store-bought product. So eventually they're going to, once again, come to a slow roll, or they're going to start talking to people instead of trying to find buildings, and they're going to look at people's bikes and they're going to say, where'd you get that done? So that's really kind of the cool rabbit hole you get to go down too with biking, is that you build relationships off of it. You know, trust me, the guy who makes leather seats that he stitches, you know, that guy knows everybody now, you know, and that's awesome. So that's kind of the cool thing about the customization game is, yeah, you can go to the store and buy, but the beauty of it is really, and that's customization, is making it your own.
I think that's a really a Detroit thing too, and finding a way to make it more fun. I think we do that even in the darkest days in Detroit. Find a way to have fun.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, what's the coolest thing you've ever seen in terms of?
I mean, I touched on it just briefly a second ago, but there's a couple that came out a couple seasons ago, and I couldn't believe it. I was actually out of town, and somebody said, "Man, you'd have to really believe this," but a guy built his bike and put a barbecue grill on the back of his bike, and then his girlfriend.
Wait, gas or coals?
It
Like,
was
what do you-
like charcoal, like and
Come on.
And listen,
Sure.
I have the video, and literally she's behind him flipping the burgers and the hot dogs on this bike. I wouldn't suggest
Don't try
riding
this at
around,
home,
right?
kids.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But that's the beauty of slow roll, is like if it doesn't exist, we're gonna make it. You know, in the early years, people used to get so mad at us about littering. And right when we first came up with our code of conduct, we tried to have people really understand that it's not just our ride, it's everybody's ride. So if you see somebody littering, you know, you guys can all say something to them, and you don't have to get permission to say something from me. Well, the next week, a lady had built a trailer with a garbage can on the back and was just riding around. And surely it wasn't enough to handle thousands of people worth of trash. But just that moment in time where she felt like she could make a change, she went home and did something new. I mean, that's the
cool.
beauty of it. And those are the memories that I'll always have are the ones of like the things you'll never, you know, one time we had a horse-driven carriage, you know, like on the ride. Okay, now imagine this is a horse-driven carriage, and
Yeah.
it's got like rims on it, like a lowrider. And now, once again, I have a photo of this, and we wanted to be mad because we wanted to be like, "Yo, this is slow. We're supposed to be on a bike," but he didn't have a motor. You know what I mean? And that was what we really had to say. You know, props to him for coming out. You know, so every year you think you see something crazy. Nope.
Somebody tops it the next
Oh
time.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your transition from slow roll? And you were the founder, and then you start to walk away and build this smaller RiDetroit. Talk a little bit about how that evolved that way.
Well, it was, for me, when we started slow roll, like at the very beginning, it was never about numbers. Okay, we got about numbers once the numbers started to come.
And when you say at the beginning, when was that? Because I wasn't here at
Like
the time.
2010, I mean, and when we say the beginning, you're talking not even really like there weren't flyers going out. You're talking about me calling our friends and being like, hey, there's a bike ride. So, excuse me, we don't really count 2010, but we do because it's a legitimate year. But, at that time, we were just about quality and having a good time and seeing Detroit. But then once the numbers started to come, just like anybody else, you want to see how far you can push it. And that was, I think, for me, sort of the beginning of me losing my sight of what was important. At the time, we were like, yo, let's go to the salt mines or let's go to the Manoogian Mansion. But then it became, let's just put a flyer out and see how many people we can
Show
get,
up.
Because no one's seen anything like this. And let's put Detroit on the map and all that stuff. I mean, it truly was important because it did do exactly that, put Detroit on the map. But for me, that was when I started to like sort of, I would always ask, what are we doing here? All the time. Not in a way of what are we doing here? Like, why? But it was like, what's our main purpose with this? Why are we here? And so then over the years, we do this Apple commercial, and Apple comes to town, and Apple really turned me personally upside down in the sense of I had never been outside of this country. Okay, I grew up in Detroit. I had never been a foreign exchange student or any of that cool stuff. And so at that time, not only to have this international spotlight thrust on us, but it was my opportunity to learn, really on a level that I had never experienced before. So that was really the beginning of the real transition for me, is when I went to Mexico and I saw how slow roll affected them and what bicycle advocacy meant to Mexico.
So wait, back up. How does Apple get involved, and what do they do, and how do you get that call?
Yeah. So at that time, we were kind of already bubbling. Once we started to gain traction in certain ways, I was that guy like, oh, let's go. So at this time, we were already kind of doing a lot of PR, locally at the time. So not to say that we didn't pay a lot of attention, but we were just doing so much of it that it just came. I mean, I remember there were times that I would just be like, you want to do this? And Mike would be like, you want to do this? And I'd be like, yeah, whatever. So I get this call, and, Apple doesn't say, hey, it's Apple. We want to do a commercial and, give you all this. They say, hey, we're this production company, and would you mind telling your story to our boss? And so at that time, I had done so many interviews. Yeah, sure, and I really had this sort of elevator pitch that was about 30 seconds long that really was just to get you off the phone. It was, we started this, blah, 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 blah. Cool, hung up the phone. The next day they call back and they say, hey, would you mind telling this to telling it to another boss? And at the time, I'll be honest, I think we had just been offered a reality show. Okay, so we had just really been offered a reality show that we had just turned down. So it wasn't like out of our it wasn't out of our realm of thought.
What is the premise of the reality show? Is it
I tell you what, man. It's funny. So this was our experience personally with, and I don't know if this is how they always work, but they came to us and they said, hey, we love what slow roll is. We think this would be an awesome show. And we said the same thing. Well, what's the show? And they said, hey, can you do us a favor and identify like 20 of your friends, give us their names, their ages, their jobs. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that for? And they're like, well, we're looking at who could possibly be on the show. So I'm a realist, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Casting, it's a reality show, but it's casting. And then they said, the next time they said, okay, we picked these 5 or 6 people. And they said, we picked this person because we think they're kind of a screw up. And they're like, not going to and I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, and this person's this. And every one of them had sort of this oddly not negative trait, but could be spun as a negative trait.
Yes, so they could edit it to be these characters.
Could be in the cliffhanger. It could be a negative trait.
Yeah, and so, we didn't, and it wasn't very much of a conversation, but we talked about it for a second. And of course, we hadn't experienced anything like that. So there was a great group of people who were like, let's do it. Even the
let's
people.
Let's just be on TV.
Yeah, right. Like, let's do it. And then, Mike and I, we've always really based our growth off of not jumping at carrots. And so we said, you know what, man, let's not do this. This, it just doesn't seem like it will work out for us. Doesn't seem like it's us. It's not about us.
See, I think that was the wise move. I mean, we've talked to people who have been on reality. Dave Landau was on Last Comic Standing.
And they're like, oh, it's just, it spins out of control and you don't know what's going to happen. And then you look at it like, that's not me.
He was talking about how he did a set that killed, except for one joke. Roseanne Barr didn't get it. And when you watch the episode back, they edited it all around that.
Do you think he was bombing?
Right. Yeah. No. And so we, when this phone call came, we had just had a production sort of call already, so it didn't really bother me. So the second call, I did the same 30-second pitch, let's get them off the phone. And the next day they called, I swear they called and they said, would you mind telling that to a 16-person conference call? And I said, okay, who am I talking to? What's going on? And they said, look, we're thinking, we can tell you this much. We're thinking about doing a piece about you. And at the same time, I still don't know who this is, We're thinking about doing a piece on slow roll, and I'm like, cool. We had done some stuff, so it sounded cool. And then they're like, we're going to send you an NDA and and then we'll talk more about it. And to tell you, I didn't even know what an NDA was. I was like,
It's
sure.
a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, sure, send it, man. And
Yeah.
so, and I tell you, it's funny because they faxed it through, and it was, first of all, it took up every piece of paper that I had almost in the house, and definitely ran out of cartridge of ink, because when it came through, it was about an inch thick.
Whoa.
And at the very bottom, on the last page, it said Apple.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
And so I signed it, sent back that one sheet that with my signature on it. They didn't need the rest, obviously. Sent that back, and they said, yeah, Apple wants to do a piece on you guys. And they started talking to me about concepts. And probably 2 weeks later, they were on the ground. I mean, and this is another funny story. Is I walked out of my house. True story. I went to walk my dog. It was first thing in the morning, and I'm out there in like, you know, a pair of shorts and like t-shirt, probably a robe jacket, you know, whatever. Half awake, and I see all these people like going up and down my block with clipboards, and I'm like, this is strange. Maybe DT's doing something, you know, survey. And I hear this lady go, Jason, and scream down the street. And I look, and it's the set lady. Her name's Carol. She's like, yeah, we're down here signing everybody. And I'm like, signing everybody to what? She's like, they're going to do the commercial. So I didn't even know yet until that morning.
What? From her?
From her.
Wow.
And at that moment, my status definitely changed in Corktown.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, because
I bet.
my neighbor just started looking at me and going, who is this guy? Because until then, I was the slow roll guy for sure. But
Yeah.
like
Right.
all of a sudden, they're like, and no one can
else
say
you got
anything,
going?
you know? So everybody's like, so what's your name? You know, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I ride bikes. You know, they're like, so this is an awkward moment, you know? So it was fun.
At what point did riding bikes become what you do for a living?
Probably year 3 of slow roll. When we got to maybe 100 or 200 people, Mike and I said, one of us is going to have to put more than part-time into this. If we want to obtain our goals of, you know, whatever they were at that time, getting to 200 people and making flyers more than once a week. One of us
Quit
is
your
gonna-
job, hang out at Kinko's all day.
Yeah, one of us is going to have to quit. And at the time, I was kind of fed up with my job anyway. I was working in TV. And so I was already like, man, you know what? I'll just go ahead and see, you know, I'll tell you what I originally thought is I'll just go on unemployment and I'll see what happens. Like, let's see if I can finagle this. And if it wasn't, shout out to unemployment. Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to obtain my dreams, because while I was on that, not only was I looking for a job, but I was essentially paying myself to build this. So, you know, like the weeks that I didn't have a lot of work, I always had unemployment that I could fall back on, even though it wasn't a lot. Then I could just say, all right, I'm looking for a job, but I need these copies made, or I need to pay this graphic person, you know, $50. You know, I can make that happen.
You know, I have no idea if there are studies on this, but it would be really interesting to see what the role of unemployment is in terms of making entrepreneurship
Entrepreneurs. Yeah.
possible. It has certainly made a couple of my unsuccessful ventures possible.
No, but I tell
That's
people,
reality.
you know, it's, you know, you put into it. So I tell people all the time, you
Yep.
know, if you have a dream or a goal, like figure out whatever it takes to fund that. And that was the opportunity at that time. If, you know, I can't say where I would be if it wasn't for
that,
That's why
yeah.
I say shout out to them, you know, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So each year, slow roll grows and grows and grows.
Yep.
You were there for 8 years,
Yep.
and then what's going on in your mind?
So I'm traveling at this time. I've like I said, I've been out of the country and I've really started to talk to people, but I've really started to go to Minneapolis a lot at this time. And if you've never been to Minneapolis is really the bike mecca,
Yeah.
I think, of the United States. I mean, Portland's up there, it's good, but the infrastructure that exists within Minneapolis it's essentially a bicycle highway, you know, everywhere. You can ride your bike from one side of Minneapolis to the other and never see a car or a stop sign.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And so when you are starting to hang out with, you know, people out there and you're starting to see how they commute even in 2 feet of snow and how, then I'm like, whoa.
They're a hardy bunch, I
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah,
We have family
yeah.
there. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I went to I went out there for the winter cycling conference to talk at this conference. And while we were there, they got 2 feet of snow and they called the conference so everybody could go on a bike ride. And I was just like, what are you talking about?
What? Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we got a fat tire you can use. And I was like really trying to talk every angle out of it. I was just like, I didn't bring clothes. They'd be like, I got clothes. Next thing you know, I have this picture of me and I'm just like, okay, so to wrap your mind around it, we were riding bikes when all the flights were getting grounded. I couldn't get home, but we were out having a good time on bikes. So when you start going and seeing places like that, you just want to bring that energy back here. Like Detroit was already building bike lanes and building bike infrastructure, and I just wanted to add to that. I wanted to throw my seasoning on that.
But it sounds like, you're getting out on this circuit. Explain what that is. I mean, you're out speaking at biking conferences, or what are you doing? Where do you go as a bike personality?
Yeah, man. You'll hear me say evolution a lot when I talk about all of this. And through the Apple commercial, I was invited to do my first ever I used to be a high school representative. So I used to go around for this college and talk up in front of kids. So I think that really honed me, for public speaking. Because if you can speak in front of kids, you can speak in front of anybody. Well, I got lucky enough to get another call, man. So, Charlie Curve called me, Charlie Wilberg called me from TEDx, and he called and he said, hey, we'd love for you to speak at TEDx. And I said, okay, because once again in my life, I never say no to anything. I'm stupid that way. I mean, I'm doing a Dancing with the Stars thing right now. Don't even get into that. But so Charlie calls me and he's like, yeah, you want to do this? I hang up the phone and I call Dante, my friend, and I'm like, yo, I'm doing TEDx. And he's like, do you know what that is? I'm like, I have no idea. He's like, bro, that's fairly large event, sir. He's like, you might want to Google that and look it up. So I look it up and I call him back 10 minutes later and I'm like, yeah, how do I get out of this? And he's like, nah, dude. He's like, Dante's always been that guy in my life who really pushes me forward in a positive way. He used to tutor kids. He's easily one of the kindest people ever. And he's like, you got to do this. He's like, now's your time to really own this, man. He's like, you can define what you are and what you guys are. And so he said, I need you to write your speech and walk in front of your laptop, set a timer. They gave me 12 minutes, which is a pretty long time.
That's a long one, yeah.
So for 2 weeks, I'm walking in front of my laptop back and forth. And then I go into TEDx and throw my speech completely out the window. And after I did that, I'm a dramatic dude in the sense that when I really think of the gifts that I've been given, I can get emotional at times. And so I ended up crying at TEDx.
Yeah.
And it really, you cry on camera, man. They love it. And
That's gold.
I keep trying to get her to cry on the podcast.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's just
man.
it's not working.
If you get the emails that I get from people, it's not a hard thing to do. And so that particular day, I let it out, and then Apple took me, invited me to go on some speaking events, and then public speaking became part of my repertoire. Not only did I start Slow Roll and did I help, put that together as far as the infrastructure, but then I got to be lucky enough to travel around the country, the world, and speak about it. And then we have, at the time, we had 5 other Slow Rolls. I think they still do Chicago, Minneapolis, Twin Cities, Minneapolis. Like I said, they have 5. And so I got to go to those 5 different Slow Rolls and sort of help those guys start theirs. Buffalo is huge right now. It's actually almost as big as ours, I think. I mean, infrastructure-wise, it's bigger. Their mayor rides every week. Mayor Duggan. Their mayor rides every week.
There's a
I'm
challenge.
just kidding.
Throwing it down.
I've been throwing it down lately.
Yeah.
Man. Lately, he's got Shinola #1 off the line, so he's got to come ride that
There
with
you
me.
go.
You know?
So I imagine as you're going around from city to city, you're not only representing Slow Roll, but in a lot of ways, you must be representing Detroit.
It's crazy.
For sure.
One of the things I hear all the time in my own head is, one time somebody said, how can we be more like Detroit? when I was on tour, and I said, how do you mean like slow roll? And they said, no. How can we be more like Detroit? And never in my life would you think you would hear, at least in my lifetime. I mean, I would say that because I love the city and I get it.
Sure.
But, we grew up here. I mean, let's keep it real. Never in your life would you hear somebody say, how can we be like Detroit?
No.
And
More so, how can we not be?
You know what I mean? And so that's when it started that evolution began, is starting to understand sort of my role and owning it as being sort of an ambassador to the city of Detroit, and its positive change and what it is.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that now you hear that much more often, and it's great. The change is incredible.
It's a beautiful thing. There's so much stuff happening in Detroit right now, between incoming tourism, between influx of new employees. I mean, there's so much new positive energy happening down here. And it's almost like being a minister, except you're spreading the word of Detroit.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And that's a beautiful job that I get to have every single day when I wake up. That's how I put it in perspective, when I'm like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed, or I don't want to do this. I go, wait a minute, dude. Your job is to ride a bike or walk around Eastern Market and talk about amazing art, or come on, man. I mean, there's not a better life choice that I could have made that would have put me in a better position.
Let's talk about some of the things that have happened in Detroit when it comes to biking. You've got a lot more bike lanes.
Yeah.
You've got, bike sharing going on all over. I mean, you've even got things like the velodrome put in.
Man, I'm proud to say that, I hope that slow roll had played a role in that, to really show, because at a time where bicycling was sort of on the back burner because they didn't know how many people, and we didn't even know. We joke our first slow roll, somebody says, what are you going to do when 100 people show up? We always said, there's not 100 people that ride bikes in the city of Detroit. And so it's an amazing time to get to see the voice that they have. And now, you listen to the mayor's speeches, and he talks about how important it is to connect neighborhoods via mobility and bicycling. And so that's the part that gets choked up in me too, is that the people, it's one of the few times where the voice of the people really does change the needle on something. A lot of times we can vote on something and you look and there's no real change. But for the first time in a long time, the infrastructure of bicycling is in the forefront of conversation, and it's affecting, like you look at Livernois, somebody's talking about how they're taking the lane, taking the median out. And the next comment was, they need to make room for the bike lanes, or it's going to be an awesome place for patios. And and these are things we never talked about, like how important it is to have a beautiful facade on the front of your restaurant with people sitting out front where people can ride their bikes by, and how important it is that the people on those bikes see that that's a bike-friendly place, that they can get water, and then they patronize that place. And don't even get me started on, what slow roll put back into Detroit's economy in the summers. So when you invest in that culture, you're what you get back, your ROI on that is huge.
Yeah, it's a win-win. And just to see how the MOGOs, for instance, have far exceeded expectation, where something like the Q line is underperforming. It's just, I think everything has led to the next step in the bike culture. So for sure, slow roll had a huge part of that.
The next step is here, and I'm excited about it. It's, I've seen bikes change, just because of my connection to them. But the next couple of years, what we're going to see with the real push of e-bikes and electric stuff is going to be huge.
I'm on board with that because I get lazy.
Well, I've seen this stuff at CES too. And it also makes it accessible in cities where it's not. I mean, go try and ride a bike in San Francisco.
Exactly.
Like, good luck. And now you can.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I could sit here. I was that guy. I didn't have an e-bike. And, I always have to be shoved into something. And somebody literally had to give me a bike and make me ride it to really see what the value in it is. I was that pompous guy, like, I ride a bike every day. Why would I need a motor on my bike?
Right.
But then, you go out with the 70-year-old guy who used to ride road bikes every day of his life, but now can't because he has issues. But then you give him an e-bike, And this guy is now riding 50 miles a week. And not only is he physically feeling better, but his whole mentality is out the roof. He comes into the shop and he's like slapping high fives to everybody. But before that, we couldn't get him to smile, you know? I mean, there's a million different applications, and that's what I love about it is I get that, you know, people say the lazy person's bike, and my response is generally is, well, it's only as lazy as you want to make it. You know?
Yeah. Like I'm the type, okay, I could ride 12 or 15 miles, say. But like if I want to be with some friends of mine that easily ride 25, that'd be cool. I could have an e-bike next to them and do the things they're doing.
Yep.
And,
I just had a friend, she came up to me and she says, my friends always go on these weekend-long bike rides. And she's like, you know, when they come home, they have all these memories and they have so much fun. And she's like, and I would love to be able to do that. But she's like, I don't have the time to train to be able to ride 100 miles or 80 miles a day. So I said, hey, why don't you try this e-bike? And the next thing she said, first of all, she didn't even bring the bike back. She just said, how much is it? Because that's how game-changing it is on so many different levels. And we're not even talking about environment and saving of money. You know, I live downtown. The amount of money I save on parking is, you know...
huge.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know, $20 and up to park for an hour down there. Gas, ridiculous. So, yeah, man, the revolution that's coming with e-bikes... that's my new baby that I'm pretty excited about.
Okay. And so you're working with Trek to do that, the Trek store in Royal Oak.
Yep, we're doing American Cycle and Fitness. Yeah, those guys are really, you know, I run across these times in my timeline where I've come across people that really are genuinely amazing people, and they believe in your dreams. And Michael, the owner of American Cycle and Fitness, years ago, I went to him and I said, hey, man, I'm throwing this bike show. I don't know if you guys know about the bike show I used to do. Mike and I used to do what we thought was, well, it was kind of like an auto show, but for bikes at Kobo. And that wouldn't have been able to happen if Kobo didn't believe in us. And I mean people, individuals. And Michael was one of those people, when we called him, he said, what are you talking about, a bike show, auto show? But he always stayed involved to the point where he recognized that my dreams were valuable. And so we were lucky enough to partner up and believe in each other. And, you know, hopefully, like I said, I can't wait to announce some amazing things that we have going down.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah.
Well, one of the things you can talk about now is what's happening on April 20th.
I can.
Yes.
That is our opening shebang. Mm-hmm. Everybody come out, our opening season party at George Gregory on Michigan Avenue from 6 to 9. We got Griffin Claw getting away some brewskis. We got food on deck. American Cycle and Fitness is going to be demoing e-bikes. Our merch is coming out that year. We got tons of giveaways. I just like to throw a party. You know?
Yeah. Talk about that. You had such a party culture with Slow Roll.
Oh, yeah.
And then you kind of got away from that a little bit. And so,
you know,
bringing back the party.
Yeah, man. Babysitting 5,000 to 10,000 people a week sometimes takes away from
the party.
You got to prioritize. Are porta potties more important than the DJ? Sure.
Probably so. Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm. You know, so you learn to prioritize. And we used to throw some crazy parties. I remember one year we used to throw a prom. And every year, where people would get dressed up, literally in tuxedos and dresses, and ride. I remember one year, Dwele came out and DJ'd, and it was amazing to see, like people. Yeah. That was where Slow Rollers felt so special at that moment because I went out of my way. Not I, but like everybody. Dwele was a rider, so it wasn't that out of the way. But to put that together was something special at that time, you know, and that's. I want to bring that back, man. I want to ride bikes. I want to show off the amazing stuff that's going on in the city right now because it's changing so
rapidly.
Fast.
Yeah. Yep.
So I just want to like have fun, show off all that cool stuff, talk about some history before we forget about it because that's important too. You know,
and frame how we got to this place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we look at that big hole and we're excited about the Gilbert building going in, but it was built off of something, and that building was called Hudson's. And so, like I said, I like to talk about the history, and I talk about the new movement because it's here now, and
we're living it. Yeah.
And I got no problem with it. You know, people ask me all the time about new Detroit and old Detroit, and I say, listen, you know, there's got to come a time where we have to let go sometimes of the old. We don't have to forget it. But we got to move forward. And I think Detroit right now is in a very progressive, forward-moving place.
Yeah, I can see the excitement in your eye, and that you've got your creative spark back, and so that's kind of how it led you to RiDetroit, right?
Yeah,
that you just needed to tap back into that.
And to be honest, when you have 5,000 people, you can't you're pigeonholed. You know what I mean? We have to play by these rules, and I'm okay with those rules because they exist for a reason, but. I long for the days where we could just throw caution into the wind and decide to drink or do whatever we wanted to do on that day. And that's what RiDetroit really is, a backup to that moment of being able to be free and just enjoy everything.
This is why a singer in a band is like, guys, I got to go do a solo album. It's not you. It's just
it's me.
Right.
I just need to tap back into why I'm good in the band in the first place.
For sure. That's the great analogy. And that's exactly how I felt. I said, if I step away, hopefully it'll bring back this love that I had. And not saying that I didn't, what I lost the love for was the work. I really don't want to spend my day in the Wayne County building.
You didn't find joy in organizing all those porta potties?
I always bring up porta potties because that was really one of the last things I would hung my hat on, when we had porta potties every week. People would always be like, "Hey, where's the bathroom?" I'm like, "There's 5 of them right over there." Okay, I ordered them myself.
Right.
So, that.
And that was your most common question. Where is the bathroom?
Well, that and how long is the ride?
How long's the ride?
People would always say, "How long is the ride this week?"
I don't know.
Come on, man. I do know, but I'm not. Just get on the bike, man.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
It's not like any
Just
other
come
week.
on,
We're not
follow me.
throwing any 5-mile fold in there. They're like, yo, so.
All right. Jason, you ready to play a little game?
Let's play.
All right, I'm going to ask you for a series of rapid-fire recommendations or just fast questions. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Starting with this, you've watched a lot of neighborhoods change over the years. Which one do you think has evolved the most and why?
Whew, that's a good one. I'm going to say Corktown. Corktown's really evolved, I think, just because of the timing of everything right now, and they've really had an opportunity to sit back and watch other neighborhoods. I would have said Midtown, but and they're doing it. I mean, Sue's really still killing it over there, but Corktown, what they're doing right now and the speed that they're doing it at, and I would say Corktown right now, and I'm kind of biased because I live in Corktown, but no, honestly, if you go over there and you look at Michigan Avenue. And you talk about just since the announcement of Ford, the amount of development that has occurred on Michigan Avenue. Wow.
So you go by all kinds of buildings in Detroit. What's one that's still out there that you would like to restore yourself if you had unlimited funds?
Wow. It can't be a building that's already... Maybe the Moose Lodge.
Okay, where's that?
It's the Moose Lodge over off of I don't even know. It's still theirs, I think. It's over behind the old Town Pump and Centaur off Clifford over there. Yeah. That one, or I can't think of the name of the bank, but there's a bank over there that right off of I think Clifford as well that still has the vault in it, and it used to be a club way back in the day, and you could actually go in the vault. I have a thing for old banks.
Oh yeah,
so that's
super cool.
Yeah, that's probably one of those two would be it. All the other ones, man, Uncle Dan's got 2 of them. You know what I mean?
No, the good ones are taken.
He's doing a number. Come on, Dan, let me get one of those.
What is the best biking anthem or biking song by a Detroit artist?
Ooh,
by a Detroit artist, the best. Detroit.
I mean, when you launch a new bike ride, what do you blast through the speakers?
It's gonna be something Motown. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge Stevie Wonder fan, and this song has nothing to do with biking, but Boogie on Reggae Woman is just the energy behind that song is really gets the crowd going. So that would be my Detroit. I don't know if, does that count? Motown?
Stevie is good for every occasion.
Yeah,
I'm doing this
30-song
challenge, and I swear I could name a Stevie song for every single category.
Oh, yeah. That's another cry moment for me. Take me to a Stevie Wonder concert and watch me cry.
Okay, Seth, we got to do that. Okay, so
I'll show you guys my Trek video after this. I cry in that too. I'm telling you, I'm a
good.
crier, man.
Oh,
Can you do it? Can you do it on command?
No, I can't.
I'm
And
gonna
that's
start crying.
dude, that people always say that. They're like, "Do you do this on command?" I'm like, "I wish, man." This is
Right, then the money
this
was-
is
yeah,
the bread
yeah.
maker right here.
so you grew up here. What was your favorite Detroit spot as a kid?
Belle Isle. Everything, I grew up downtown. My parents both worked at the UAW. So whenever after school or anything went down, it generally revolved around downtown. Even later when I went to Friends School in Detroit. So we used to just really, Detroit was our playground. So no kidding, man. Belle Isle was like the spot. You know what I mean? You had the slide alone was hours worth of fun. But it felt like an infinite world as a child. Like now, it's only 5 miles long and yada, yada, yada. But back then, it almost felt like this weird enchanted forest. Like you could never be found. And that was what it was for me. And as soon as I got old enough to ride my bike there, I did that too. And it just expanded. To this day, that's where I go when I go to clear my head on my bike or anything of that nature. I go get a couple laps in on the aisle.
Nice. We've talked about how you've traveled all over the country and even the world as an ambassador for Detroit. What is the question you hear most often about the city of Detroit?
Wow, what is the question I hear most about? It's usually something funny. Out of the country, it's going to be something not related to bikes. It's going to be about entertainment. It's going to be about Eminem. You know what I mean? Like, because that's they out of the country, they're trying to find common ground. So that's kind of Eminem. If you're in London, it's techno, but usually it's Eminem. The question I hear the most is, how do you make a living off that?
Yep.
It's a good
To
question.
be honest, that is the question I get asked all the time. People get so excited about everything, and then when it finally settles in that's my job, they're like, wait a minute, how do you make money doing this? So that's pretty much that's it.
So if you had a time machine, first of all, would you go back in time or forward in time, and to what moment in Detroit?
Oh, I would definitely go back. I would love to see what Detroit looked like when, and I hate to use heyday because we're coming into a different heyday, but 1 million people in the streets, I mean, the days of streetcars, I can't even imagine, and that's just in America, but Detroit too, like imagine the Industrial Revolution at that time and when the time of invention. I'm a big nerd that way. And so that would have been a fascinating time to be in Detroit, to see the auto industry really coming into it fruition. And, that would be a crazy time. So I would probably go back in that.
What's your favorite bike accessory that you own?
My bell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's because you got to get out of the way. That's why. That's
is it
the
just
only.
a straightforward bell? Is there anything?
Usually the loudest thing that I can find, the most annoying loudest thing, because if I'm using my bell, I'm going fast and I need you to move. So that's why, I got some pretty awesome light kits these days. With the technology that they're doing with lights, you can blind somebody in a second. But I'd much rather just pull up behind you and blow a big old horn.
That's great. Who's a Detroiter whose name everyone should know?
A Detroiter that
Yeah.
everybody's name should know besides
Yeah.
mine?
Yes, yeah. Can't name yourself.
Eric Thomas.
Okay.
Eric Thomas is coming up, and I say that he's not coming up, man. Eric is here. He's a speaker, public speaker from Detroit, very outspoken and very tied into to what's going down in the city of Detroit. And I really agree with a lot of stuff that Eric says. And I think that soon we will all know. I think a good majority of people know who Eric is if you're a listener of blogs and podcasts and happenings. But pretty soon he'll be changing the landscape around here.
Is that a running for public office kind of thing?
I don't know I don't see Eric doing that.
No.
I don't see him running. I see him working with somebody who's running. You know what I mean? But
Why do I feel like he knows something that he's not telling us?
Nah, that dream came and went. You know, my mom used to say, you should run for mayor. But the mayor doesn't make enough money.
Okay.
It's not. You know,
Was Mike Duggan one of those guys asking you, how do you make a living doing that? I feel like I could be doing better.
Right? Yeah.
All right.
Very nice. Good stuff.
Jason Hall, the founder of RiDetroit. Again, the ride is coming up on April 20th. Do people have to register for it if they want to go? How does it work?
You know, I'd like you to RSVP. That's on our Facebook. You can get to our Eventbrite through that. However, it's a party. You know what I mean?
Show up.
Just don't get mad when we run out of food and drinks. There's a store down the street.
Nice. And of course, people can go to the website. The website is just RiDetroit. We got to say it right. It's
RiDetroit.
RiDetroit. You got to blur it all together. So what's the website then if people want to go?
RiDetroit.com.
All right.
Keeping it easy. And they have super cool t-shirts, I must say.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you've got new stuff for this year.
Oh, wait till you see what we got coming up. Yeah, I got a good guy.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Well, we'll check it out and have a great ride. Until next time, Detroit's moving.
Keep out.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.